Okay, video 2. So I've made the pants. I've got them all together. And of course I have my pockets in there. So at the back seam, so I've actually overlocked my edge because it's actually a very fine material and it can fray a lot. Sometimes I will just use that as the edge, but I like it. It's a nice, neater look if you've turned it over. So I've turned the seam allowance over. Now, in the pattern, it actually says, in the tip to keep elastic from getting stuck in the seam allowance. So when you turn it over, if you're putting the seam allowance, see how the seam allowance is going that way, and being a left-handed, I thread it this way. It sometimes gets stuck in there. So what they're saying is you can do a stitch down here. So I'll do that. I don't usually do this because I don't tend to have a problem. So you just put a stitch down. Just wait a moment. Down the seam. So I put a stitch just catching this part of the seam down, so it actually will stop the elastic and the safety pins hitting that and getting caught underneath that. So I've measured it around, and I'll just make sure that's measured the allowance down. I didn't use a ruler for that because I just think it's quite, rather than a tape measure, but it's just my own preference. Now to sew, you always leave threads there. You always leave a gap, like a good gap. And because I thread from left to right, you probably thread right to left, but I always leave a gap about this far in the seam, so that's where you get your elastic from. And if you're doing it the other way, I would leave it on the other side. And I always do it at the back because I think being at the back, when you actually join because you normally overlap your elastics to actually to sew the two ends together. I find being at the back, you don't notice it. At the side, sometimes it gets a bit bulky. So I'll just go ahead and sew this seam, this hem. So it's just basically making a big hem on the tops, just so your allowance can go, your elastic can go through. I just realised I still have a tacking size stitch on there, so I'm just going to sew that. And I've already prepared my elastic, so as soon as I've done this, now I've got a fairly big piece of bulkiness here because of my pockets, but it's actually been tacked down, so it shouldn't actually cause me too much problem. So I'm almost back to the second pocket. So I'm back to the beginning at the centre back. And I like to leave a fairly wide gap, just to make it easier to get the elastic in and out. I have my piece of elastic. Now I always double up my safety pin like that because, and also when I had babies in nappies in the old days, I often used a nappy pin because it had that extra security that it wouldn't come undone, because it's really annoying if it comes undone in the garment. So I'll show. So I'm just threading it through, and as it comes through, and I'll just show you. Oh wait, we'll keep going, but I'll show you. I'll just pretend this is all the way through. When you lap it over like this, what I tend to do is actually put it on a zigzag, because I find I'll just show you this. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. If you put it on a wide zigzag, and I do 2 rows, so I do 1 row down as a zigzag, and then I reverse it and do exactly the same back, and then I'll do it on, like, so I do 2 rows, I do it again, because I find if you, at some point, if you feel, sometimes elastic can, when it gets old, stretch, or if you need to change the size of your elastic, as we sometimes do, gain weight or lose weight, what you can do then, I don't think you could be able to see it, but I have like zigzag down and back and down and back, and then you can really simply use a quick unpick to actually unpick that to change your size, because if you use just a normal stitch, that's very, very hard to see the stitches through the on the white elastic. So that's that I find that just easy, and it still holds quite strong. So I hope that helps.